The Lord's gonna take you and he develops your life in secret. So it's the foundation is below. It's in secret, it's in hiding. He develops that root system. He'll take you, he'll call you, and then he'll develop your life in the field of prayer and intimacy and worship. But another area that he develops your life in is in the cave of community. God took David and he put him in a field where he learned prayer, he learned intimacy, worship. But God also stuck him in a cave with people. The cave of Adullam. He stuck him in a cave with people. There are many foundational things you've got to have in your life if you're going to have longevity. But one of them is this. You have to have community in your life. He will develop your root system and he will develop your foundation in community. John chapter 17, Jesus, in part of that prayer, he prays this massive prayer of community. He says, I pray that they would be one as we are one. And as they are one, they would be one in us. He prays a prayer of community. Community is a big deal to God. It's a big deal. I mean, you need to understand how big of a deal it is. It's such a big deal that he consistently, there's this concept that we have in the Western church that somehow our story is creation, fall, individual redemption to God. But it's a very Western mindset. If you read scripture, the story is creation, fall, redemption to community, finding redemption in God. And we have this concept that somehow it's just me and Jesus. But the Bible doesn't say that. It's not just you and Jesus. I know that sounds blasphemous, but it's not just you and Jesus. He cares greatly about community. Listen to this. I'm just going to make reference to this. You don't have to turn there. Listen to this verse real quick. Matthew 5, verse 23. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, talking about communion, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and come and offer your gift. 1 John 4 says, if someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? Listen, I believe that this is my simple point that I want to go after this morning. You have to set your life up for longevity. Longevity is what matters. It's not just about bearing fruit. It's about bearing fruit that lasts. And you have to deliberately position your life for longevity. And in order to do that, it means that I have to allow God to develop my root system and develop my foundation. And there's a process involved. And part of that process, and again, in the life of David, David wasn't prepared in the castle. He was prepared in the field, prayer, intimacy, worship, and he was prepared in the cave, community. That these foundational pillars in your life have to be in place if you're going to actually sustain what you get. Have longevity. So this issue of community is massive because the Lord will develop your life in community. And he doesn't allow you to be on your own. Literally, I need you to get this verse in Matthew. Jesus comes and he says, listen, whenever you come to the altar, whenever you come to have communion with the Father, God will actually stop and say, listen, I want you to put this on hold. Our connection, put it on hold. Because you have a disconnect with a brother. Go get reconnected with your brother and then come back and connect with me. It is such a big deal to him that he says, put this gift on hold until you fix that. He says, listen, you can't say you love me and hate your brother. It doesn't work like that. You have community. He stuck you in a family. But there is, I believe, there is a war against John 17. I believe that one of the big things this generation faces is isolation and independence. I believe it will, listen to me. I believe that isolation and independence will kill the call on your life. That God is going to stick you in community. And it's with a bunch of messed up people who don't have it all together. And he sticks you in there. He says, go figure out community. Go learn how to love people. And he develops your life in there. And one of the things that's coming at our generation is this issue of isolation and independence. And let me tell you this, isolation is a killer for believers. It is a killer for believers. Proverbs talks about it. Elisha encountered it. Isolation is a killer, and independence is a killer. We have this thing where somehow we can just do it on our own. We don't need people. We don't want people in our life. The concept of community where my walls are down and your walls are down and intimacy is flowing and intimacy is flowing. I just tell stupid little silly stories to get your mind to point, but listen to this. When I was youth pastoring early on, I didn't know what I was doing, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So I bought a big fish tank in my office, 55-gallon fish tank. And I bought these big fish, Severums or whatever. And I remember watching them one day thinking, these are boring. I want like some colorful, lots of fish. So I went down to the store. And I said, hey, do you have any fish that will school together? I want to see them swim in a school. So they gave me these little colorful fish. I don't know what they were, mollies or something. And I got 10 of them. I put them in there. And they were in there for months. And I asked them, I said, are the other fish going to bother them? They said no, so I stuck them in there. And I'm watching them one day. And again, I don't know if this was prophetic. I don't know if the Lord was speaking to me. But I'm watching these fish one day. And I noticed that out of the 10 swimming, one of them is off on its own. And so there's 2 big fish and 10 small fish. One swimming off on its own. So I kind of look at that and notice that the next day I come in, only 9 fish. And I'm watching this that day, the next day, and as I'm watching 9, I notice that 1 isn't swimming with the group. I come in the next day, 8. I watch 8, I kid you not, I'm watching 8, I notice 1's not swimming with the group. Next day, 7. I'm watching 7, 1's not swimming with the group. This happened for over a couple of weeks until all of a sudden there were no small fish left at all. Isolation is a killer. Listen, I really want you to get this picture. What the enemy tries to do is he tries to get you isolated from people. He tries to get you isolated from community. He does it a whole bunch of ways. He does it by, us not wanting people to control us and tell us what to do. He does it by shame. He does it by embarrassment. Listen, I know what it is to deal with issues. I know what it is to deal with sexual issues and be so embarrassed just to go talk to your close friends about it. I should be further along than this. I shouldn't be struggling with this. I'm embarrassed about this. I understand what that stuff is, but the enemy comes through offense, through shame, through independence that's in us that just kind of wants to do our own thing, and he begins to separate us and isolate us. Isolation is a killer. It is in community that the Lord begins to build our root system so that we can bear the fruit that he's called us to bear. At the end of the day, what I've realized is that not only is community a big deal to God, you cannot get away from it. Listen to me. You cannot. Independence and Christianity are countercultural to each other. They don't mix. And what I've realized is, at the end of the day, not only is community, listen, it's not the only foundational pillar, but it is a key foundational pillar that has to be in your life. That my life is open and connected to others.